For those of you who speak to me on Discord, you may be wondering where I've been for the last couple days. I have not been there. I haven't been on my account. I haven't opened my account. I have no intention of opening my account. I've been by myself, playing video games, browsing the internet from time to time, and relaxing. I've been a lot more relaxed ever since I exited the Discord client, just thinking about how much time I spend during the day looking at Discord without actually seeing anything. It's kind of incredible. I would just open the client randomly every now and again as I was doing something else, and it would actually interrupt that task. Like if I was watching a movie or an episode of anime or playing a game, I would open up my phone or go onto the computer to look at Discord when there was nothing on Discord there. And I habitually did this again and again, slowly taking up more and more of my time every day. There was no reason for this. It was simply something I did. And the fact that I've blocked myself off from using it and have not touched the site and frankly at this point don't want to touch the site for at the very least quite some time, the sort of residual anxiety I would get from feeling as if I had to check Discord all the time almost is completely gone. I would get kind of extreme situational anxiety just thinking about what it was that I said at one particular point. Like, will people react to this one specific thing I said in this server? There hasn't been a reply for a couple hours. Jesus fucking Christ, what did I do? People posting, like, just opinions that come close to making me argue with them or come close to getting me to start a big, angry discussion. Like, those things, I would see those things happening constantly. Like where an argument could form, I would be forming it in my head the moment that I saw, the opinion that I had some strong disagreement with, which is always a waste of time. Always. You are never going to gain anything out of arguing with anybody. There's no point to it. And I can find discussions or simple exchanges of ideas fun on the basis that it increases empathy for the other person, but the amount of energy that I have to exert in order to empathize with other people is extreme, because in the beginning, or rather at my baseline, I'm just thinking about, oh my fucking god, this opinion is so stupid. Why can't this person just understand where I'm coming from? Why can't this person just come over to my side? And I don't know if anger is the right word per se. I certainly get some residual anger from just thinking about the existence of other humans overall, or thinking about the problems in communication that make it difficult for me to effectively communicate my point, or simply the problems with human beings that make it difficult for me to communicate my point. But a lot of it is about irritability, just getting really irritable when I'm in those situations, because I have to actively keep myself from saying something insulting to the other person, or I have to actively keep myself from just blowing up at them. And this happens constantly. When I was younger, I used to have these random outbursts where I would just unfriend the person who I was friends with, because I would just get too pissed off by these other worldviews. And again, I don't consider myself an angry person or someone who is particularly angry, because I don't think anger solves anything. There's no point to it. And in comparison to other people, I'm like a chilled out saint over here. But I would be lying if I were to say there weren't, huge spots in my mind where irritability comes to fruition. Perhaps a lot more than other people in these specific ways, where being around other people for too long simply causes me to have outbursts. And I'm much, much better about controlling it now than I used to be, but eventually eventually when you've bent for long enough, you're gonna break. And I saw the signs of that. I would see things people would say, and I would start typing out a big, long rebut of something that they had said, and then as I was reading through it, as I was looking at it, I would read through it 5-6 times and then just delete it. I would delete it right there, and then I would close the client. And I found myself doing this more and more and more, where I would want to get angry at somebody, or I would want to argue with somebody, and I would just stop myself from doing it, because there really is no point. You're just causing more stress for yourself by doing that. There's no point. And so I've thought a lot about the fact that for pretty much as long as I can remember, I've had these extreme outbursts towards other people, just from being around them for long enough, that really the only way I could minimize the brunt of that was not being around other people, by choosing to walk out, by just walking out. And that has been profoundly better for my mental health than trying to ignore it in the moment, because again, that just doesn't work over time. You just get mad, and then the time when you're getting mad there, you're 10 times more mad than you would normally be, because you have all of this residual anger from these other things that you had been suppressing up to that point. I've tried going the route of doing like Socrates, where you just ask people fair questions, and you try to be this like calm figure who can look at everything from a detached and unbiased perspective of just purely, these are the questions, let me ask them and you can answer them. Let me ask you this question that could lead you to this conclusion by seeing these flaws in your own logic, by having to answer that question. I tried going by that Socratic method because one of my best friends, who's way more nice than I am and way more calm than I am, told me that that's how he's able to talk to so many people who have radical disagreements with him, because he just has the energy for that. Like, he was presenting it to me as if this is just a logical skill that you can train yourself to do. But many of the, first and foremost, like, high up psychologists and psychiatrists, the people who really write the books on this stuff, will tell you that many aspects of personality are static, that you cannot simply change personality for all of its contents. You can change big aspects of it, perhaps, but a lot of aspects of personality are simply things that you need to mediate around. They're things that you have to find creative ways of adapting to, rather than find creative ways of getting rid of. The most effective therapy that I've had, or the most effective self-help that I've done, has always been to recognize these very consistent patterns in my behaviors and then challenge them by adapting my behavior around the acknowledgement that those things exist, not by looking at those behaviors and saying, I must change these things completely. I've never been able to do that. I've been trying to do that for years and years, and it simply hasn't worked. The circumstances that I've come from, the genetics that I've been given, has made it to where I have this personality where I am irritable. I'm overwhelmed by other people, deeply, deeply overwhelmed by other people. When I'm not getting angry and blowing up all these times and actively ruining my connections with longtime friends, I'm also feeling anxious, incredibly anxious about the things that I might be saying, where I'll delete lots and lots of posts that I'll make because I'll think this is incredibly cringeworthy, or this doesn't get to the heart of the point I'm trying to make. This communication here is not working. How would people react to this? Why hasn't anyone reacted to this? It's all very overwhelming. And when I look at how easily I've been able to be completely isolated with relatively good results for my mental health in comparison to not, I have to wonder, why haven't I been doing this more? When as I again analyze the patterns and look at those patterns in order to make predictions for the future, and have seen those predictions be accurate through comparing them to that past information, I can't help but be met with the conclusion that I am not fit for other people. I am not fit for the human community. I'm even on something as simple as a chat room, as something as simple as just a client where people talk to other people on the internet. It's too much for me. I get too overwhelmed. I'm not made to do that. I'm made to read in my room, to look at information and compare it to other information. I'm made to play these video games. That's like all I've done for most of my life, and I love doing it. It makes me genuinely really happy playing video games all the time. I'm made to take care of pets. I love animals. Animals will never bring you any of the stress that human beings do. And I know it sounds like a Reddit tier sort of a girly meme of like, oh, all I need in my life is just a dog. But that is genuinely how it is. I would much rather have a home that I live in completely alone for the rest of my life with a bunch of pets than a home where I live with someone else and have online friends who I regularly talk to. And that's a terrible thing for me to say, and I realize that that's a terrible thing for me to say, because I've let people get too close. I've let people get connected to me and care about me, and it's disgusting that I've allowed myself to do that, because, again, as I was saying back in February in my video, Don't Worry Anon, I am going to disappoint you. I was always going to disappoint you. The confines of my personality and these consistencies within my behavior are inherently antisocial. They've always been inherently antisocial. And reconciling that, realizing that, I realize that I'm going to hurt a lot of people. And that's how the cookie crumbles. There's really not much that you can do. It's just the way that I am. And I would say that, I would say that the world did this to me, but in moments like this, I feel like I'm just doing this to the world. And that's okay, because this is how I prefer to live. I prefer to be in my own guided fantasy, where the structural elements of my environment are determined by me, where I can define, where my living space is defined by my own will, and I can customize everything to the extent that it's comfortable for myself. And, a lot of the Ava fans, or just the general humanist advocates of spending time with other people, would sit here and say, well, this is the hedgehog's dilemma. You're afraid of getting hurt by other people, and so you don't want to become close to them. And this is a very common trend in stories. It seems to be a common belief that people tend to hold, that, the character who withdraws themselves and doesn't allow themselves to be seen by other people is this, is this damaged entity that must come to terms with acting the way that everyone else does. But I've never really understood why that trope is so prevalent, or why that trope is meaningful to people in the way that it is, because there's nothing inherently wrong with that kind of withdrawal. There's nothing inherently wrong with closing yourself off to other people to that extent, if it is the best way for you as an individual to live. And you are the only one who can figure out what that means, or what that is. Other people are not going to be able to tell you what the best way for you to live is. They may be able to give suggestions or ideas based off their own experience, or based off information that they've accumulated over time, and perhaps sometimes those suggestions end up being more meaningful than your own analysis, because they come from an unbiased perspective. But for as many of those perspectives as I have actively heard out, with those good intentions in mind, and for as much research and introspection as I've done, the only conclusion I can come to is that being alone is the better option, that being alone is the more mentally stable option, that being alone makes me happier. And again, it's horrible that I've allowed myself to let people care about me this much, or to let people, be connected to me for as long as I have, because the longer you allow that to continue, the worse it's going to feel when the day comes where you have to cut them off. And this is just how it is. This is how I live my life in a more stable way, with less headaches, annoyances, irritability, sadness, and depression. And I can say with the utmost certainty that I've been significantly happier, bar none. Like, it's like night and day, the amount of comfort I felt ever since I left Discord. And I would prefer to keep it this way. This is just how I've lived my life for the majority of my life. And as long as I continue, again, living in a way that is ideal for me, living in a way that, makes me feel the best that I can, and doing so through these observations that are based on evidence, or based on recognizing these consistencies. If that upsets you, then I just have to say that's just the way that it is. There's no two ways about it. This is just who I am, and I'm sorry. Watched enough of my streams, you've no doubt heard me blow up at people before. There was one stream in particular where I spent I want to say 10 minutes just back and forth screaming at this regular viewer of my stream, just so pissed off. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was about me being told to cite a source or something, and I told the guy, well, just look it up. You can find this stuff pretty easily within the first couple searches. And that was okay. That was a simple response. I said that because I wanted to move to something else. But then he started insulting me. He started insulting, my ability to understand and compartmentalize data, and claiming that I was unable to cite sources. And that got me so mad that I ended up, just yelling at him and then justifying it with the idea that, oh, I'm not actually angry. I never get angry. This is just because I hate humanity. And I believe I said something along the lines of, sometimes people just deserve to get yelled at, I think was the wording that I used. And you could tell that I was mad during that stream. And I think everyone could, but no one said that I was. And I think there's a kind of respect that, or at least tolerance that people have towards me, that they'll notice, they won't be saying the quiet part aloud, because they want me to figure it out myself, that I am experiencing that emotion. They don't want to overstep their bounds by contradicting the narrative that I'm giving. Even the people who really don't like me are often like that. And for one, I appreciate that level of respect, because it allows me to realize these things that do clearly exist over time, not necessarily immediately, but through reflecting on them. I always end up realizing something in at least close proximity to the truth, because I'm not able to delude myself for that long. Self-delusion for me always lasts a short time. It always tends to go away. And so that's why I talk so much about consistencies, about recognizing the things that have been consistent, because when push comes to shove, that's the only thing that's real. And, so I was thinking back to around November or October-ish of last year, around the time that I was put back into school. I was put back into school in September, and I had like the first week I was feeling bad, but I was trying to feel good about feeling bad. I was trying to position myself as someone who was just going to work really, really hard to get ahead rather than behind, because I was incredibly behind. I've been behind in schoolwork my whole life because until I was 12 and a half, I was homeschooled, and my parents basically just never educated me. I had to really quickly be ready for fifth grade because I was held back a year when my parents put me into public school. I end up, not going to school for eighth grade because I was getting into fights constantly in seventh, and also getting into a pattern of never doing my work that year. The only really good school year I've ever had was sixth grade, because in sixth grade I was motivated to do well, and I had teachers that cared about my performance, and would actually like sit down with me at a table to like break everything down. So that was the only good year of school I ever had. But otherwise, I've been behind pretty much my whole life. And that's incredibly overwhelming when you're thrust into a situation where you're around all these people and you really, really don't want to be around all these people. It makes you irritable and overwhelmed to just be around them. And then you start denying that fact because you don't want it to be true, while also dealing with this huge workload of stuff that you're essentially not ready to be doing yet. And you don't have the tools to go back and work on the components that would allow you to be ready for those things. So my body felt physically ill after about a week of going to school, and that optimism of like, I'm going to be a go-getter and achieve my dream or whatever, completely went away. It dissipated. And all I was left with was this extreme lack of energy when I came home. I would get home at like 4 o'clock and be incredibly tired. I didn't want to do anything except just lay in bed. I would talk on Discord, and I never did VCs almost ever during this time. Like, ever since I had gotten into school, I just did not VC. I couldn't. I had no energy for it. I think I did it like 1 or 2 times. And when I would opt in to conversations in text, I had a terrible time just about every time, even if I wasn't making it clear. Even if you couldn't see it, even if I was putting on the mask really well, that was there. That impending sense of dread every single time I even spoke to someone in a chat room, because I did not have that much energy from having to be around people all the time, even having to have a few face-to-face conversations while having this huge workload of stuff I was not ready to do, completely got rid of any energy or any semblance of energy I might have had towards other people, making all of my conversations, of course, be defined by the negatives, entirely the negatives of those conversations. When, again, already I have to suppress so much of who I am at my baseline. I have to suppress so much just to be around other people consistently and just to talk to them consistently, and that doesn't even work most of the time. You can imagine how bad I was feeling with going to school too. So the positivity, I'm going to do a normie quest thing, that didn't last very long. Very quickly, the depression started setting in from going to school. Extreme depression and anxiety. And so, I locked myself out of my Discord account. I changed the password to the email it's associated with, and I changed the password to the account itself, effectively barring me from ever getting back into it. That's why it still says Training Arc Star Gone Fishing on that account, is because I have no ability to get into it. I intentionally locked myself out. And the goal was to never come back. And after over a month of this, I was feeling really good, because basically ever since I made a Discord account, I had been trying to leave Discord. And I had left for like months at a time in the past, weeks at a time in the past. Those breaks were a very consistent thing with me using the platform, because, again, I just could not take people. I've never been able to. Anyone who's known me for a long time knows that. And when I had this, more than a month away from Discord after all this time of failing at these breaks and stuff, I felt tremendously liberated. I felt so good about that fact where even though, I was having this tumultuous experience in school and every day was making me think about suicide, the one glimmer of optimism and hope that I had was the fact that finally I was allowing myself to not be around other people. That any guilt that I would typically feel from leaving for a long time or from not talking to someone for a long time was not there. I was not guilty for it. It was there for a couple days, but after those really, really hard couple days of feeling guilty, it was gone. And I didn't feel that like addictive urge to use the platform at all. There, it was gone. Um, and that was a feeling I had been waiting for years at that point, years of having began using the platform, and since having began using the platform, I mean, and the reason I came back ultimately was not because I wanted to reconnect with the existing friends I had. The reason I came back was because my former friend Yoshika Miyako Red, Rimu Madatsuki, whatever you want to call him, that Asian YouTuber, I came back to Discord so I could comfort him because he made a video which you can no longer find anymore because he deleted most of the videos on his channel, called Lonely. It was just called Lonely. It was him walking through his neighborhood, going to the 7-Eleven, and talking about how he gets these like obsessive thoughts about friends that he has, where he listed me, Twisted, and Gummy. Those were the three people he mentioned at the time. And I remember his Discord being so tiny at the time, there were like 10 people, where he would just talk to basically just me and Twisted. That was almost every discussion that happened in the server. And once I left Discord, again for over a month at this point, he had been talking about, I miss Star because I have no one to talk to. I'm just lonely all the time. And I watched that video and I felt so much empathy. I felt so bad for Yoshika Miyako Red that I just had to make a Discord account again because I didn't want him to be alone. And that's part of why I got, so mad when he unfriended me over a fucking joke that I made on Discord, because I had let go of what, in my own mind, I had let go of everything just to help this one guy. Because again, I'm talking about a history of desperately wanting to get away from Discord ever since I, started using the platform. That much has been made very publicly clear for years now. And when I was able to do that, and I had like this Nirvana-esque feeling that I had finally, reached this time away from these other people, and I wouldn't have to go back, I was brought back in because of my own humanity, because of my own guilt, because of my own empathy. And then, after having done that, after having let go of this thing that I had wanted for so long, the dude just spit in my face and unfriended me over a fucking joke. Because he made his server public later on, and had nothing but people to talk to. He was never lonely. I was not a special person anymore because I was not one of the only people he talked to. All he really wanted was to fill his life with interactions the way any other normal fag would want to. And, being met with that kind of staunch reality really pissed me off. That was the reason I got so pissed off at the time. It wasn't because I think he's like a uniquely interesting or good person. He's the same as any other normal person you would meet, It just sort of co-opting the aesthetics of being a NEET and a hikikomori without actually adopting the ideology of it or the true implications of that lifestyle. So, that was why I came back. It was never because I, needed other people or some, bullshit like that. It was never because I particularly missed anyone, even if I said that at the time. And again, be prepared to be disappointed. it was because I wanted to help that guy. And because I just happened to be on the platform helping that guy, I also was in the position to refriend everybody else and I suppose help them out by letting them know that I wasn't dead and, you know, I don't know, keeping them from missing me. But I'm kind of tired of all of this.